I've got the woe begone, down low Mifwump Blues. But grandfather's garden is the cure for the Mifwump Blues.
Hey everyone, it's Brie Mathers from the Girls Resiliency Education Fund, back to read to you another episode from Grandfather's Garden by David Loye. And today we are going to be reading one of my favorite stories. It's called Thudgelinka. Once upon a time, there was a little flower that grew from a bulb in the ground in the spring. Of course, she wasn't a flower at first. She was just a little green stalk that came up from this bulb. She looked like a rather thick blade of grass at first. And it was while she was at this early stage, not sure of what she was, whether she was a blade of grass or whether she was an oat or whether she was a tulip or goodness knows what, that her parents named her. Her father was named Thudgelunker and her mother was named Thudgelinka. And the mother said to the father, "What should we name our little child?" And the father said, "Why, of course, my dear, we must name her Thudgelinka because all our female children since the beginning of time have been given the name of the Thudgelinka. If she were a boy, she would be given my name, Thudgelunker." They both felt very good about this because they both thought that these were, of course, naturally the two most beautiful names on earth. And if the truth be known, they rather looked down their noses at all the other flowers around them that had other names like Mary and Joseph and Paul and Mildred and Hortense and Hepzibah, names like that. As far as they were concerned, there was nothing prettier, nothing more harmonious, nothing more noble, nothing more gracious, or nothing more memorable than the name Thudgelunker for a boy and Thudgelinka for a girl. And so it was that little Thudgelinka Gladiolus was given her name, which may have been challenging for her were she not also female identified. Beauty and the Beastly name. She didn't think too much about it for a while as she was growing up because she just steadily got a little bit thicker and a little bit taller, and she was still green and could have been anything. She could have been a jonquil or she could have been a tulip. She was getting too big for a daffodil, but she might have been some kind of lily. But no one thought too much about it. They just accepted the fact that she was a Thudgelinka. But when she began to flower, she was just absolutely orchidaceous. People began to notice her when the first flower appeared on her stalk. It was a glorious, luminous, light shade of purple. At first, people would come from all around and say, "My goodness, look at that. Look at Thudgelinka." But by the time the next flower on her stalk appeared, also a glorious light shade of purple, someone said, "What an ugly name for such a lovely flower. Thudgelinka. Ugh, ugh, ugh." There were others who heard this, and it was whispered around, and it became the thing to say. "Isn't it just awful about Thudgelinka? Such a lovely flower and such an awful name. Such an awful, ugly name. Thudgelinka, ugh, ugh, ugh." There was a particularly nasty little group of dandelions who would come by. They had made up a little song that went like this: "Thudgelinka, Thudgelinka, blanky, 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 Thudgelinka, Shudlinka, aren't you an ugly one, Thudgelinka, Shudlinka, blinky, blinky, blanky, blanky." Of course, this made poor little Thudgelinka feel dreadful. The glory of the Thudgelunk tradition. Her parents told her, "Just don't pay any attention to those people. Legends tell us they've been coming around us gladiolas for a century, trying to put us down because we have the most lovely names in the world, Thudgelinka and Thudgelunker." They told her legends of all the great Thudgelunkers and all the great Thudgelinkas. The Thudgelunkers fought all kinds of big things like dragons, and they climbed mountains and they built railroads, and they were successful captains of industry, and at least 10 of them had become president of the United States. And the Thudgelinkas had been among the most ravishing dancers of all time. They played harps in concerts. They were great actresses, famed for the ability of their voices to be heard even before the days of electronic amplification. Even if they uttered so much as a whisper, they could be heard clear in the back of the great concert halls. This would buck up little Thudgelinka for a while, but then this dreadful band of dandelions, now joined by a bunch of ruffian thistles, would come by and hoot and holler and snicker and sniggle at her, and they would sing their little song. Thudgelinka, Thudgelinka, aren't you the ugly one? Thudgelinka, Thudgelinka, blinky, blinky, blanky, blanky. Thud Tinkerbell to the rescue. She was feeling very downcast about all of this, when one day her aunt came to visit. Her aunt's name was Thud Tinkerbell. Thud Tinkerbell was a lively soul, and it made Thudgelinka feel good just to see her aunt. She told her aunt of all the problems she faced because of her name. The legends of the gladiolas that my dear parents tell me is some comfort, she said, but my father tells of nothing but Thudgelunkers who became president of the United States and things like that, while all the females of our species, the Thudgelinkas, can become nothing but actresses or singers. Her aunt, Thud Tinkerbell, said, "My goodness, child, it is lucky I came along because I have been working to correct that sort of distortion. Some of the Thudgelinkas have been among the greatest mathematicians of their age. Others have been great novelists. Still others have founded mighty social agencies that have done much good in the world. And still others have been remarkable athletes and even heads of state." Well, this made Thudgelinka feel better for a time. But back came the dandelions, and back came the thistles, and now they were joined by a particularly noisy band of burr clover, absolutely the most vulgar and prickly of growing things. And they would march around her and sing their little song. One day her mother noticed that her flowers, which had shot up one after another, climbing up her stalk until there were 8 of these lovely blossoms, were beginning to droop. "Oh dear me, what can we do?" her mother said. "Poor little Thudgelinka is beginning to droop with despair." The great yearning. The word was passed throughout the garden to all the gladiolas. Something must be done, and they focused all their yearning upon little Thudgelinka. They yearned and yearned and yearned that something good would happen to buck up her spirits. But each day she seemed to be drooping just a little more. And then, one night, when there was a full moon, down from the sky on a moonbeam came riding a little old lady no bigger than a thimble. She was riding an old-fashioned tricycle on this moonbeam. She had yellow shoes and a polka dot dress, and her hair was dyed green. Now, normally someone would look ridiculous to be dressed up like that, but there was something charming and indeed a little touching and even more so quite fetching about this little old lady. As the moon crossed the sky, slowly the shadow from the house where Thudgelinka lived passed on by, and the moon was shining directly down on Thudgelinka. The little old lady on the moonbeam came riding down and sat on the leaf of a lemon tree close by Thudgelinka and spoke to her and said, "Why are you drooping, my child?" And Thudgelinka said, "Oh, it's nothing." And the funny little old lady with the green hair said, "No, it is something. I can tell. I've been watching. I've seen you drooping. Now tell me what it is." And Thudgelinka said, "Oh, I really can't. If you're a magic person, there are so many other people in the world that need your magic. You should go and help them." Thudgelinka's reward. But the little old lady with the green hair said, "I am here. I am your very special, very own spirit critter, and the magic I have is just for you. When you were born, I was born, and my sole mission in the universe is to wait in the moon until a time of great need emerges in your life, when all else has failed, and then I can come riding down to earth on a moonbeam and do one magic thing to make your life better. So the time has come for me to do this. And Thedlinka said, well, if you must know, and if it is true that it is only I that you can help. And the little old lady said, it is only me. And Thedlinka corrected herself. If it is only me that you can help, then I will tell you. It's my name, Thedlinka. I realize it's traditional, and I hate to be ungrateful to all the hundreds, maybe hundreds of thousands of Thedlinkas who have gone before me, and I don't mean to be disrespectful of a great tradition, but it is an ugly name. The thistles and the dandelions and the burr clover, though nasty, are right. It is an ugly name and an ugly tradition, and I am beautiful, and I deserve better on this earth. And the little old lady with the green hair said, you certainly do, my child. I am giving you a new name. And she called out in a voice that was astonishing, such a big voice from such a little critter. She said, hear ye one and all. And everything in the garden woke up and sat up and rustled its leaves and got ready to listen. There was a twitter of wonderment. What's going on? And another twitter of hush, hush, hush. And they waited, and then, in the clear, compelling voice, the little old lady with the green hair said, I hereby take away the name of Thedlinka forever. And she wrote the name Thedlinka on a piece of paper and rolled it up in a little ball and rolled it between her hands, and it disappeared. And then she reached behind Thedlinka's ear and pulled out another little piece of paper that had something written on it. And she called forth to a grasshopper who came jumping over, and she gave the new piece of paper to him and said, here, read this aloud. This is your new name. The mumbling grasshopper. And everybody waited with great anticipation. Nothing like this had ever happened in the garden before. And the grasshopper said, mumble, mumble. And everybody said, what? What did he say? The little old lady said, speak up, let's try again. And the grasshopper said, mumble, 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 mumble. And the little old lady said, we do appreciate the effort, but I'm afraid we must turn to someone with a stronger voice and much clearer diction. She called out, do we have a volunteer? And a trumpet vine stood forth, and everyone felt vastly relieved, for something like a trumpet vine would surely have a voice that would carry like a trumpet. And so it was that there in the moonlight, while the whole garden waited and all was hushed, the trumpet vine took up the piece of paper and called out one word, Gladys. It struck them so profoundly. Gladys, gladiolus, the trumpet vine proclaimed, and everyone agreed it had the most glorious sound in all creation. Gladys, gladiolus, Gladys, gladiolus, they said. And the word spread. They had her on television. She signed endorsements of all kinds of products, but they had to be good products. She would endorse nothing that was substandard. You see, once upon a time, there had been something called the Good Housekeeping Seal of Approval, but now people only bought or paid attention to things if they had the Gladys Gladiolus Seal of Approval. And sure enough, as time went by, and her image and the glory of her name became more embedded and embedded in the public mind, the day came when she was elected not only the first woman president of the United States, she had also become the first vegetable, or rather, in this case, flower. And in any case, the first plant life, head of state in the world. And the mumbling grasshopper, whose name was Arnold, became Secretary of State, and the trumpet vine became her chief confidant, head of the party, and premier. And that is the story of Gladys Gladiolus, once known as Thedlinka. A moral for the story: girls can be president of the United States or anything else they want to be. Very important story. See you next week.
I got the woe begone, down low Mifwump Blues. But grandfather grandfather's garden is the cure for the Mifwump Blues.